Crimson Crossover Network. This is The Tide Machine with Charles Branch and Michael Southern. Welcome in to another episode of The Tide Machine. We're into week 3 against Wisconsin this week. Appreciate everybody joining as we get this episode kicked off. We're going to recap the Louisiana Monroe game and some of the history that was made last week in Tuscaloosa as we face the Warhawks. Obviously going to get into Wisconsin and highlight a former Alabama player that both Alabama fans adore, but I think some Wisconsin fans would adore as well from his time at Green Bay. I'm Charles Branch, joined as always by Michael Southern. Michael, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, especially after the nice bounce back win against Louisiana Monroe. Much needed, and I think the best thing about it is the way the team responded. So you saw a team that wanted to be there, and they showed it.
They showed it, and as the week kept going on, so for those who are interested, we record our episodes on Tuesdays. They come out on Friday. But as the week continued to materialize, I kind of sat back and looked at last week's team, looked at Coach DeBoer, and it felt like they were going through the scrutiny of a presidential election cycle all crammed into 1 week. I mean, every video was being analyzed, every quote from every press conference was being analyzed. And maybe it's a good thing at the end of the day, because one of the things that this team has talked about, or what you've heard from the coaching staff, is how together this team is. And even though they didn't play as well as they did against Florida State, I think we got to see some of that togetherness displayed Saturday going up against Louisiana Monroe.
Well, if Coach DeBoer didn't have his welcome to Alabama moment last year, he certainly had it after the Florida State loss. It was good to see the team did come back. They responded really well. And look, in hindsight, at the end of the year, we may be looking at Florida State as your ACC champion, and they may only have one loss or maybe no losses. Who knows? That might be a really good team for all we know. The season will play out, so we'll find out sooner than later. But again, right now, all Alabama needs to do is focus on Alabama. Control what you can control. Don't worry about anything further down on the schedule. You need to be focused on Wisconsin this week and take one more step forward.
So we'll get into the game in a little bit, but I know you were in Bryant-Denny Stadium. How nice was it to be back in Bryant-Denny Stadium at Nick Saban Field? We'll have to remember to start adding that with it as well. But how was it, just the atmosphere before the game, just being back with 95,000 Alabama fans and getting to see a historic offensive performance from this team?
So, there was deep down, I had a little concern about the crowd. Would they be lethargic? Nah, crowd did really well, especially for an opponent like Louisiana Monroe. No, not to discredit them by any means as an opponent, but the crowd gave a lot of enthusiasm. They were loud, had a good time. And look, the fast start by Alabama certainly fueled the crowd. I mean, you're talking about a performance where the offense had the ball 11 times, scored 11 times. You had 10 touchdowns and 1 field goal. So, I mean, they gave their money. The fans got their money's worth. How about that from an offensive standpoint?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal performance from the offense and the defense as well. And I know a lot of people will knock that. Look, it's Louisiana Monroe. You're not going to learn more about this team until you play Wisconsin and maybe more so against Georgia. But you can only play the team that's in front of you. And Alabama dominated the team that was in front of them. Scored the second most points ever from an Alabama team in Bryant-Denny Stadium with their 73 points. Interesting enough, the most points is 77, which was against Virginia Tech in 1974. And
Yep.
one of the quarterbacks for that team, Richard Todd, will be an honorary captain this week for the Wisconsin game. So kind of nice to tie all that in together. And of course, Ty Simpson going 17 of 17 for the game. And I think the quarterbacks were 20 of 20 overall just in the first half alone.
First half.
Yeah,
Yep.
just a really, really historic performance from the offense. And the amount of times that Louisiana Monroe actually ran plays on our side of the 50 maybe was in the single digits. I don't know if they ran 10 plays on our side of the 50 throughout the entire game as far as their offense.
No, as much as we were talking about the offense, the defense played with some renewed enthusiasm as well. I think I'm pretty sure the coaches lit a couple of fires underneath them to get them a little more motivated. Especially, look, you can't tell me that Bray Hubbard wasn't embarrassed by some of the film that had been circulating around. So I saw them play with some passion and some motivation, which was good to see. And real quickly, I want to go back on those offensive performances. 11 for 11, 10 touchdowns and three field goals. You talked about the 20 for 20 performance by the two quarterbacks. You had that with Austin Mack and Ty. You can't play 7-on-7 and probably go 20 for 20 on passes. So you actually did that against a team. People will say Louisiana Monroe, but you did that against a team. So that in itself was extremely impressive. And again, I think that really helped. I won't say the fan base is 100% convinced of how far this team can go, but at least they saw potential and they saw promise and they can see a future.
I want to put a pin in that 20 for 20 from quarterbacks because I got a trivia question related around Alabama quarterbacks, and we'll see if you can go 20 for 20 here in just a second. I was not at the game, but if I have one complaint about the game, my boys went with my wife and grandparents to the Alabama game last week. My understanding is the Louisiana Monroe Warhawk did not show up in Tuscaloosa, which I'm hoping is not a negative effect from NIL, where you got to save resources. And I say all this from this standpoint. My youngest, who was 2 years old at the time, we went to the Louisiana Monroe game in 2022 and got a picture with the Warhawk. So I thought it would have been fun, to see him grow 3 years from now to get another picture, but unfortunately he wasn't there. So, maybe Louisiana Monroe can take a collection to get the Warhawk back to Tuscaloosa in any future games. I'm also putting this out there for either any Eastern Illinois fans that are trying to get a preview of what this Alabama team's going to look like in November. Please bring the Panther to Tuscaloosa with you. Put him in a Tony Romo jersey as well, because I know he's an alumni from Eastern Illinois. But I hope that's not another killer of NIL, as we don't get to have the cheerleaders, the traditions. I know you're probably not going to have a band for something like that, but man, let at least the Louisiana Monroe Warhawk fly. Other eagles across the state, you can put them in a cage. That's fine, but we're fine with the Warhawk flying in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, that's funny. Well, one of the things I joked about on the Tide Machine X account was I posted a picture of the transformation of the elephant mascot to the current Big Owl. So if you want to go back and look that up, you'll get some laughs out of what they did years ago. And even in the 70s, the iterations before we got to the current Big Owl.
Yeah, I saw, I responded to that tweet as well, and I am team red elephant or crimson elephant, maybe even more so than trying to bring the white helmets back. So if we can dig out the crimson elephant and have him on the sidelines, I'm all for it. So, all right. Now down to business. Let's see if you can go 20 for 20. And my
Okay.
question to you, what Ty Simpson did is something that no Alabama quarterback has done. No quarterback in the SEC has done, as far as going 17 passes without an incompletion and finishing the game with zero incompletions. Since the turn of the century, there's actually been also 20 starting quarterbacks at Alabama. How many of those 20 starting quarterbacks can you name starting in 2000?
So I should get most of them because I was covering the team all the way up until 2019. So I was lucky enough to be in the press box for a lot of those games. So that 2000 season was terrible, but of course you had Andrew Zal mainly in 2000. Then Franchione came in. You went back and forth. So Andrew Zal, you had Tyler Watts. Then in 2002, Brody had a start because Tyler was injured. So you had Brody taking over in 2003. 2004 was the Shula year where everybody got hurt. So you would have had Spencer Pennington, you would have had Mark Gillen, you would have had the one homecoming. I think it was homecoming, Brandon Avalos, where we did attempt to pass. I think we ran the ball every single time. And then after Brody's tenure, you went to John Parker Wilson. So that was the last of the Shula years. Then you migrate into the Saban years. So John Parker, he had the job. Then you transition to Greg McElroy for national championship year. Then you transition to AJ McCarron in 2011, 2012, 2013. 2014, you would have had Blake Sims. 2015, you would have started the year with Jake Coker. You would have had the one game where Cooper Bateman started. Then Jake Coker comes back. 2016, you would have had Blake Barnett against USC, but he only lasted like 3 or 4 possessions. Then Jalen Hurts took over as the starting quarterback. So Jalen would have had it 2016, 2017. Tua takes it in 2018. Mac Jones takes it in 2019. 20, wait a minute. No, no, no. Tua still had it in 2019. Mac Jones had it in 2020. Bryce Young took it in 21. Then in 22, Jalen Milroe made a start because Bryce was hurt. 23, Milroe starts. Then you have the one game where Tyler Buckner starts against South Florida. And of course, now you're here with Ty.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is why Michael Southern is the Alabama historian. A
I don't know about
perfect,
that.
a perfect 20 for 20 on the starting Alabama quarterbacks. That was very, very impressive.
Well, I'm just lucky in the fact that at least I covered like 19 out of those 25 years. So I was in the press box, covered a lot of those teams.
Look, the two most impressive pools are definitely Brandon Avalos and Mark Gillen since they were 20 years ago. But an incredible, incredible 20 for 20, which we'll keep those good vibes going. You talked about the 2000 season. To be honest, I felt like we were going to beat Louisiana Monroe, but I do feel like I had some vibes or some feelings that this season could have ended up like the 2000 season that we talked about last week, where things kind of fell apart. You didn't have the team leadership. After watching the game Saturday, I get 2015 vibes from this team. Maybe I get those vibes more so because that team in 2015, when they lost to Ole Miss in the game that Cooper Bateman started and Jake Coker eventually came in and almost came all the way back for the entire week leading up to Louisiana Monroe, which was the next game, you had so many analysts, so many professionals talking about the dynasty being dead, that Alabama was done, Ole Miss had taken over, the SEC West, and just Alabama was not going to be Alabama anymore. As I started to dive into it even further, that team had a game at Georgia. So in 2 weeks from now, if there's a rainy forecast for Athens, I'm going to feel even better about this being a 2015 team. You also had games, of course, against Tennessee and LSU at home. You had the game on the road at Auburn. You played an FCS opponent in Charleston Southern for the first time ever, which we're playing Eastern Illinois for the first time ever in November. And I won't say that was the prettiest season, but that was a team that really came together, played tough, and as we know, eventually became national champions. And the other thing about that team was they started the year off against Wisconsin. And obviously, as we talked about, this team this week will now get to play against Wisconsin.
Well, I definitely, again, it's still early in the season, but I would agree that I definitely would have better. I have more vibes toward perhaps a 2015 outcome versus a 2000 outcome, simply because there is still talent on this team. I think the potential for the offense still there's a lot that can be unlocked. So let's see how that develops. But you're right. And look, we're going to play Wisconsin this week. We've only played them 2 times prior. Been 2 dominating wins in the 2 times that we played them. Not predicting that's going to be exactly like that, but we'll see. You would think that Alabama should have an advantage playing at home. It's going to be hot. Welcome to the South. Welcome to humidity, Wisconsin. I think they're going to struggle with that. And then, yes, if Alabama, takes care of Wisconsin, you got a week off to prepare for Georgia. And you're right. In 2015, when everybody doubted them, everyone said Georgia was just going to just run over them. Alabama just pulled one out, and they just took it to them. So it's going to be very interesting. First things first, though, get through Wisconsin, and then you can worry about what lies after. But let's stay focused on Wisconsin. It's really interesting the fact that Alabama and Wisconsin haven't played that much. They've only played the two times prior, but this will be the second time that Alabama gets to play against Luke Fickell. So we'll see. Don't forget, we played Luke Fickell when he was the coach at Cincinnati in the 21 college football playoffs.
That's right. And then it is surprising that this is only the third time that Alabama and Wisconsin have played each other. And maybe not so much from the regular season standpoint, but you think of all the Big Ten versus SEC bowl games that we
Yeah.
continuously see and the amount of times that we're in games in the Outback Bowl or the Gator Bowl. I mean, there was a stint in the early, I feel like 2010s where Auburn and Wisconsin were playing each other every January 1st. And Wisconsin was having, whether it was Brett Bielema going to Arkansas or getting rid of this coach or that coach, and Barry Alvarez, their AD, was continually having to step in just to coach the bowl game. So it is surprising to me, somewhat similar to Florida State, that this is not a series that has a little bit more game history than what it does currently.
Yeah, because traditionally, Wisconsin. Now, this is not it's not the Wisconsin most people think of. Again, Luke Fickell, they're playing a different style offense, so it's not the big, muscle bound or not muscle bound, the big thick linemen and just the power running game. So they're not like that anymore. But even during that era, when you had Brett Bielema and you had Barry Alvarez and Paul Chryst, yeah, Alabama and Wisconsin, their paths just never crossed. They never crossed that often. And you would have thought in a lot of those bowl game matchups with the Big Ten, Alabama would play Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan, but Wisconsin never came up, which is kind of surprising. Very surprising, actually.
Well, that 2015 game was in what is affectionately known as Bryant-Denny Stadium West. So you got Bryant-Denny Stadium West over in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Jerry World, yeah.
Erie World. You got Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa, and then you've got Bryant-Denny Stadium East over in Atlanta. So nice to have multiple places that you can play and be very, very successful. And that's only just a handful. Of course, we've been very successful down in Baton Rouge. I don't know what the appropriate name title really should be down there, Alabama, Bryant-Denny Stadium Southwest or something like that, I guess. But
You
going
just call
into
it Bright, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
Louisiana campus, yeah.
yeah. Louisiana Satellite Campus, exactly.
Yep.
That 2015 game started off the year, as we mentioned, Jake Coker, Lane Kiffin was still offensive coordinator. You had Derrick Henry, but there were still a lot of questions about that team and kind of started off slowly, only went into halftime up 14-7. But typical Alabama football, you had about 5 to 10 minutes of game time where you got stops, you got turnovers, you got touchdowns. And before you know it, it's 28-7, and the game's basically over because Alabama was going to finish it out. Um, what do you remember as far as that 2015 game and Jake Coker starting, but just coming off of 2014, where we had lost to Ohio State, a Big Ten team in the Sugar Bowl in the first college football playoff, and just again trying to keep the dynasty going because obviously people were taking shots at it and were ready to, similar to the Florida State game, ready to get their shovels out when Alabama lost to Ole Miss. What do you kind of remember as far as the vibes or the theme as that season got kicked off?
Derrick Henry. So it's still going to come back to Derrick Henry because he again was the workhorse for that season. I mean, your eventual Heisman winner. So he made his presence known in that game against Wisconsin. Look, if you'll go back to that loss against Ohio State, I think if we would have just fed Derrick Henry a little bit more times than maybe trying to pass the ball, maybe we beat Ohio State. But you definitely got the full dose of him at the start of the 2015 season. And then I think once they realized how powerful and what they could get out of him, they rode him for most of the season. And that really opened up the play action deep passes to Calvin Ridley. You got Derrick Henry, they're having to come up to try to stop. And next thing you know, Jake's going over the top. And I always thought Jake had a really nice deep ball. There's a lot of nice deep throws to Calvin Ridley and some of those receivers. So I thought Jake did a great job. And Derrick was a big part of that. He complemented that so well. They complemented each other really well that year. Jake had a good arm, could throw a nice deep ball, and you had Derrick back there just running over people. So the defenses were like, pick your poison. I don't know what we're going to do here.
Well, and as you remember, Jake showed a lot of toughness as the
Yes.
season went on. And I think that is something that we will continue to see from Ty Simpson. He showed it a little bit to me. He showed it in the Florida State game as far as staying alive on some of those scrambles and runs. And maybe didn't get the desired result that we needed at times as far as just getting first downs, but was continuing to put his body on the line. And I think that's why he's a captain of this team, is that his teammates see it, the coaches see it, that he's going to go out there and he's going to play for Alabama. And I did like some of the commentary last week before the game of that this is a guy who could have gone in the transfer portal, but he has stayed at Alabama. He saw the route of Mac Jones. He's seen the route of other Alabama players. Ty Simpson's playing for Alabama. He's not just playing for himself.
No, and again, it's shown that it's a proven track record. We've had quarterbacks like you said that have waited their time, and it's paid off for them tremendously. So again, you just named the ones right there. So hopefully, this is the same path and the same story will unravel or unfold for Ty for this season. And who knows what happens next season. But for this one, let's hope it's the same story for Ty the way the rest of the season runs out.
But it wouldn't hurt my feelings if the result on this Saturday is also the same result we had last year up in Madison. Wisconsin got off to a little bit of a fast start, I guess you could call it. They converted a couple third downs. They kicked a field goal. We, on our first drive, got stopped, missed a field goal, and then stopped them and got the ball back. And then the touchdown barrage kind of started. And it very similar to the first time where we played Wisconsin, where 5-10 minutes of game time right before halftime, and the first couple plays of the third quarter, and the game was over. And Wisconsin fans were only sticking around for jump around, and then once jump around was over, they
Yeah.
they were out of there. That was a game too that we really start to see a lot of what the Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan offense was, where they were running a lot of more up tempo with Milroe and some of those guys. And that was also really the emergence of Ryan Williams and some of his playmaking ability being showcased for the first time in that game against Wisconsin last year.
So that was a great road win. I know they went into kind of a lull. Of course, remember they lost a quarterback in that game too. So lost a quarterback in the game, but you did see some nice deep balls. Ryan Williams put on a pretty good show of things to come, especially in the Georgia game. I know he tailed off a little bit at the end of the season, but it was that was at that time that was a very good quality road win against a name opponent. And then there were a couple of times later in the season that even Wisconsin had a chance to beat Oregon. I think played Penn State close. So that Wisconsin team, while the overall record didn't reflect it, they were a scrappy team, especially when they got into some of the Big Ten games.
It's a program that I consider to have a lot of pride within themselves and has been a maybe not a national power, but a very consistent college football program for many, many years. And I joked about it a little bit recently about the fans sticking around for the third, fourth quarter and for jump around. But that is one of the great traditions of college football. And it did get me thinking, non-Alabama football tradition, are there any other college football traditions from other schools that you like? And, if you were a fan of that program or as an Alabama fan can sit back and say, hey, that's a pretty cool tradition for that school.
And that's what makes college football special. So things like that, the little nuances and the special things that you do, the jump around tradition there at Wisconsin is well known. It looks like it's a lot of fun. I haven't been to Wisconsin, but I think that probably would have been fun to be a part of, to see, to hear, maybe feel the stadium shake. That itself would be pretty good. I think also we talked about off air. Of course, you got the Virginia Tech with the Enter the Sandman. That just looks like a fun ritual to be a part of. So those are the two that come to my mind right off the bat. That looks like it'd be something that I would like to at least experience once. Just to see how much fun it is and see the crowd really fired up to be able to participate in something like that. I'm sure there's people that no, not non-SEC schools. How about this? I'm sure there's non-SEC schools or fans that would probably want to be here for Dixieland Delight in the fourth quarter. They would probably appreciate that.
Virginia Tech is mine. I think those games in Atlanta when Enter Sandman would come on and seeing that side of the of Mercedes-Benz jump up and down was very cool to watch. I think my newest one, and they probably only did it because they were up 69-3 against Oklahoma State, but seeing the Oregon players on the field dancing to shout like they were in Animal House was
And
that was kind of a sight to see from this past weekend. the guys laying on the field and starting to get up as it got a little louder little louder now.
Oh, yeah, that that's a good one for those that may not remember Animal House that was filmed there in Eugene, Oregon. So that was the only campus they could find for Universal Pictures to allow them to shoot that movie back in like either 77 or 76. So it was late 70s when that movie came out. So funny movie, funny movie.
So even though it's a little limited history as far as games between Alabama and Wisconsin, there is one Alabama player at minimum that I know Alabama fans adore, and I think a lot of Wisconsin fans adore as well from his time at the Green Bay Packers, and that's Bart Starr. Bart Starr was great for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, their starting quarterback for those first two NFL Super Bowls was also the MVP for those Super Bowls as well. Had a injury riddled career, not only in Green Bay, but also in Tuscaloosa when he was in Alabama as well. At times he, maybe it's because of age, maybe it's because it was really before Bear Bryant's time. But I sometimes feel like Bart Starr is the forgotten quarterback at Alabama.
I mean, just he had the he had the bad timing that you're right. He played for Harold Drew and then he played 1 year for JB Ears Whitworth, and those weren't like the best of times. Now, I think his freshman year, that was a pretty good team by Drew. I think they were SEC champions and maybe they won the Orange Bowl, but then after that, things kind of fell out. And then of course we know what happened with the Whitworth era. Bart was from Montgomery. I think he went to Sydney Lanier. I think that's
Yep.
right. And
Yep.
then, of course, when he was in school, he got married when he was in school. He had a back injury. He had a lot of things. And think about this. He didn't play hardly any his senior year when Whitworth took over the team. So, and then he still gets drafted by the Green Bay Packers thanks to an Alabama basketball coach. So Johnny D, who was coaching the basketball team, of course, the Rocket 8 team, had connections back with the Green Bay Packers, I think personnel department, and put in a referral that they needed to look at this Alabama quarterback. And I think they drafted him like the 16th or 17th round. And then next thing Bart Starr becomes a living legend there in Green Bay, and the Super Bowl MVP, wins two Super Bowls. So a great career. But you're right. As far as Alabama's concerned, he just missed the Bryant era. Although he almost played for Bryant at Kentucky. So I think Bryant got a little mad at him because he didn't come to Kentucky when he was at Kentucky. But I remember that history was going on too between Bryant and Bart Starr.
I was reading that when Bart or was going to play in whatever the Senior Bowl would have been that year, Coach
At least
Bryant,
a blue gray game or
yeah,
blue
yeah,
gray classic or something like that.
Coach Bryant was a coach and did not want to play him because he was disappointed that he did not go to Kentucky. Something else when I was researching all that brought back an Alabama memory only from, seeing it, not living it. Bart Starr was part of the 1954 Alabama team that went to the Cotton Bowl and ended up losing to Rice 28-6. Do you remember an infamous play from that Cotton Bowl for Alabama in that game?
Uh, is that the one where someone ran on the field and tackled a player?
Tommy Lewis
Yeah, that's
ran
right.
off the sidelines
He came off the sidelines and tackled a player.
and his quote, which probably many people don't attribute it to Tommy Lewis, but continues to be used to this day, is when he was asked why did he do it, he said, "I got too much Alabama in me."
Well, that becomes legendary. I don't know if that was like at the time. I'm sure everyone was embarrassed as all get out, but and it has now become an urban legend, or it's actually the truth. You know, one thing about Bart Starr, I never got to meet him in person. I saw him in passing, I think once or twice in the press box at Bryant D, but I never got a chance to talk to him. But through other stories of sports writers that I was friends with during the beat, some of the older ones, they would talk about Bart Starr nonstop about how friendly he was, and he would always call you back if he missed you, and one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And don't forget, I think he had a couple of car dealerships in Birmingham for a while. He had that there, but I've never heard anything but impeccable things about Bart Starr as a person and his character. So that's a testament to him that his reputation just here in Alabama and I'm sure in Wisconsin was just outstanding.
No, he was inducted into the National Football League Hall of Fame in 1977, which my assumption, I didn't go further back, would that have made him the first Alabama football player to have been inducted into the National Football Hall of Fame?
Oh, I don't know. You got me on that one. We'll have to go back and look that one up. So we might have to put that in the comments
Yeah,
when we post the podcast.
yeah. We'll put that in the comments or come back and clean that up next week
Yeah.
when we get back together. Well, on to Wisconsin. How are you feeling going into Saturday's game against the Badgers?
Feel a lot better than I did probably about, like 6 or 7 days ago. Um, Look, if Alabama comes out and plays with the same intensity and attention that they had this past week, they'll be fine. They'll beat Wisconsin. Don't know by how much, but they should beat Wisconsin, and then they can really start turning their attention to Georgia. But I think Alabama will be okay. I Again, like we said earlier, Florida State may be the best team in the ACC for all we know. We'll find out soon enough after it's all said and done.
Think this is a game that could be pretty tight throughout the first half. And then it could be a game that we run away with in the second half. And I know there was some comments that this team really shouldn't be judged, or you're not going to know a lot about this team until they play Georgia as far as how they can do against top competition. I personally believe if you can beat a team like Wisconsin the way you beat them last year and the way you beat some of these other Power Four teams, the aura of Alabama football, or just that, winning the game before you even get started. Wisconsin's going to come in and have some belief, but if you can do your job and have the game basically won in the third quarter, which is a lot easier said than done, but I think that starts recapturing some of that Alabama nomination, Alabama fear that we are so accustomed to. And I do think this is a team that has that ability to do it. So we will obviously see all that this Saturday in Bryant-Denny Stadium at Nick Saban Field. For those who are not able to make it, 11 o'clock Central Time kickoff. I believe it's on ABC. I didn't look at who the commentators were. You know my feelings about Joe Tessitore after last week. So if you have the ability to sync it up with Chris Stewart, I highly recommend that. But looking forward to a fun Saturday. Everybody be safe. The team is off next week, but you and I and the Tide Machine, we actually will have an episode out next week. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have some fun, continuing to look back at Alabama history. But we appreciate everybody's time listening in. Excited about this weekend, and let's go get a big victory. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
The Paul W. Bryant Museum is a captivating destination for sports enthusiasts and fans of the University of Alabama football program. Located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the museum is dedicated to preserving the legacy of the legendary coach Paul Bear Bryant. The Paul W. Bryant Museum showcases a remarkable collection of memorabilia, including trophies, photographs, and artifacts that span Bryant's career and the rich history of Alabama football. Visitors can explore interactive exhibits and learn about the team's storied past, making the Paul W. Bryant Museum a must-visit for any football aficionado. Fans can also experience exhibits highlighting success of both the Alabama men's basketball and women's softball programs. Open Tuesday through Sunday. Plan your visit today and experience the rich tradition of Alabama athletics. Roll Tide.